Here we're starting out at the bottom of Quinlan Gulch. A nice V-shaped valley. The creek basically runs along the bedrock and has been eroding down in that valley for many years. It's a healthy creek, good steelhead habitat. If you got down under there, you'd see a little bit of erosion and incising into some small floodplains, but generally speaking, it's good vegetation, nice healthy creek. Now as the valley broadens out here a bit, you see a similar V-shaped channel, but it's flat on the sides. And those flat areas represent where the former floodplain was. This creek has downcut through the floodplain back down to the bedrock. And this sedimentation pond we see was built in the 80s to counteract some of that downcutting and capture the sediment so it wouldn't flow down into the Steelhead Creek and ultimately into Bodega Bay. This whole valley in front of us would have been a large floodplain. It would have had much more wetland vegetation, rushes and reeds. There probably would have been beaver ponds, and the valley would have stayed wetter much later into the summer. But since it's down cut to the bedrock, the water drains away much more quickly, there's less topsoil, and just really less life in the valley than there used to be. Here we see a beautiful set of willows below us and the upper sedimentation pond. And even with all that nice vegetation cover in the creek, this section below us has been down cutting. The bottom of that spillway is 4 or 5 feet above the channel below it. As we move into this upper sedimentation pond that's been filled in from the silt coming down and from erosion above it, you see what the floodplain might have looked like. It's flat, the water spreads out. There's not as much vegetation here as it would have been because this is still pretty gravelly. It hasn't been there long enough to build up a lot of organic matter, the really rich vegetation. As we move past that floodplain, now we're back to the erosion. These two gullies that branch in each direction, just down cut 30 feet into the floodplain. Particularly to the left, lots of soil has been moved, and above us here we see a head cut on the side channel. This is still very actively eroding. We have another floodplain with a V-shaped channel cut down into it. Lots of nice vegetation. Willows have been there for a long time. Livestock hasn't been active in that creek for a long time because the sides are so steep. But still, the creek's down cut down to bedrock, and instead of a valley full of water and topsoil, we have just a drain that runs right down to the middle of the valley and dries it out more quickly in the summer than it might be. Again, could have beaver ponds and rushes and just more green throughout the year, more life. This is Bias Creek. It has the largest watershed of the 3 creeks we've looked at in this video, and again, it's got a nice broad floodplain with a V-shaped channel cut into it. We've had the cattle excluded from this creek for about 10 years, and in that time we've seen big reduction in some of the bank erosion and increase in the vegetation in the creek, but no change from the creek flow being down at the bedrock. We'd really like to see a way to shift it so instead of passing sediment down into the lower sections of the creek, it gets captured by the vegetation in the creek and starts to build up the floodplain. This lower section here is particularly healthy because even before we excluded the livestock, it was too steep for the cattle to get down into it. So really healthy vegetation, good understory in the willows, and this section of about 2,000 feet is the only steelhead habitat remaining in the Astera Americano, because there is some good gravel spawning ground and good cover to keep the water temperature down, and it's a perennial creek, but we haven't seen any steelhead for the last several years. Hope they'll come back.